Welcome, everyone, to episode 62 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. I'm your host, Jean, the Strategy Wargamer. I'm here with my faithful and dependable co-hosts, Matt, the Historical Gamer, and Eric, Tortuga Power. How you guys doing today?
Who made you the host and us the co-hosts?
I'm the one, I guess, recording it. So I'll whoever records it will be the host.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All I know is I'm feeling very full of fate today, and that's a good thing.
Did you say fate?
Yeah, didn't you say that we're your faithful co-hosts?
Oh, yeah.
I think he said faithful.
Oh, well, that
You could be full
doesn't go
of
along with
faith.
this joke at all.
You could go with faith. Just gotta have faith.
Fate of the heart.
A little bit of faith in me.
Isn't there an Aretha Franklin song about faith?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
So I wanted to ask you guys, what have you guys been playing? What's been on your minds, or what's been on your Steam page?
Tortuga, why don't you go first?
Oh my gosh, the thing is, my list is always so long. Okay, I want to get out, get this out of there. I tried for the first time a week ago or so. No, it was just a couple days ago. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, and that game is. I don't know what happened to me. I'm like a senile old man telling kids to get off his porch or something, get off my lawn. I really hated it. I really did not like it.
Is that the one that did bad?
No, I think it's a good game that a lot of people would enjoy it if they're into like the action arcadey experience. But the thing is, like the closest thing I can get to a game where you jump around and shoot in midair nowadays, or I think probably closest thing I can get is what's that new game that Wolfpack 345 is playing a lot? That
Squad?
The one where the World War II.
Oh my god. Postscriptum?
Postscriptum, yeah. So Postscriptum seems like somewhat realistic. You know, it looks a little bit better. I don't know. Call of Duty games, I was like trying to turn off realism. I mean, trying to turn on realism options. Like, turn
I was going to say, turn off realism, just turn on Call of Duty. There you go. Realism off.
Anyways, just long story. Didn't need to be, but I don't like these games. I guess I'm just trying to earn my nerd credentials here. I'm too much of a war gamer for those kind of games.
Where's the Simpsons old man yells at clouds?
Yeah, exactly. We need Alexius. So I've been playing a little bit of that, but probably not more. It's just mainly a thing I was doing with friends. I'm playing a new game called Until the Last Plane, which is an indie game, just a one-man developer who he happens to post some updates on my Discord, asked if I would check out the game. It's like an airfield management game in World War II, where you like choose how many fighters to go off on a mission, and then there's little mini games. It's a pretty chill, relaxing game. I don't consider it like very. It's a one-man indie project, so it already has. I like the art style, but you know, there's not an insane depth of gameplay.
That's a game that I have as well. He sent my way, but I haven't looked at it yet, and I think it's going to be on the Steam Festival thing, right?
Oh, is it?
I think so. I could be wrong. Like where they do like a bunch of games have like demos that people can play.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I haven't followed like the Steam launch. I just I was actually chatting with the developer. The Carlo is his name. So
the game's not coming out till next year, but I chatted with him a little bit, and I think he was saying it's going to be on the fest. It's going to be in the Steam Festival, which is basically like a bunch of games post demos and give people sort of limited access to the game for a short period of time while it's still in development.
Might be a different person because this one goes to early access. It'll be in early access by the time people listen to this. October 7th is what I was told.
Really? Tomorrow. I thought that was the demo.
Oh, that's the demo. Okay, you're right. Then it is the same person. Thank you.
Well, because ICBM is going to be in this festival thing too, and that game is coming out.
Did you guys get a chance to play ICBM?
I have not. I started the demo, and for some reason I got stuck in the tutorial, and I couldn't figure out how to start a new game. It just kept telling me the access was restricted for a new game, but I could do the tutorial, so...
I haven't tried it yet. What about you?
No, I've been addicted to Combat Mission. I literally every spare chance I got, I've been playing that.
Dreaming about going in the sandbox?
No, I mean, I don't know what it is. Like, when I start on a Combat Mission game, like, because it's in my Steam catalog, like I loaded up my Steam catalog, right? And I go up and down my list. And every time I go up and down that list, I stop at combat mission. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm in the mood for this. So before I never played combat mission as often because, well, it wasn't my Steam catalog. I always forgot that I had it installed. But now that it's in that catalog now, it's just so easy to just start it up. I did want to ask you guys a couple of questions regarding it. I wanted to see your perspective on this. So I was playing some kind of mission yesterday where I had like a castle and there were Syrian troops coming at me. And it was actually like a castle or something like that. It was actually pretty cool. And the enemy had like tanks and tons of infantry, and I had about maybe a company size. And the tanks overran my position, and I had a couple of platoons, and I was trying to get them to the other side of the castle, but they routed because I guess the tank blew an HE round inside the room. But instead of running away from the tank, they ran toward the tank and got slaughtered. So I was just kind of like, I noticed this happens a lot in the game. Every time a unit routes, instead of running away from the enemy, they run toward the enemy lines. Does that happen to you, or is that just my bad luck?
I haven't seen that, but I do see some weird pathing sometimes because they do respect doors. So, like, some of those buildings, the way they're set up or the compounds are set up, like, if you get routed out of a building, the only escape is out the front door directly toward the enemy, and that leads to problems. But I've never seen, like, someone where they have an open field and they can retreat away from the enemy, retreat toward the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, that was the one thing that, that, and there was another thing that really kind of, I would say, I'm not saying get under my skin, but it just annoyed the crap out of me. So in another mission, I've been playing a lot of this game, I had like a compound that I was American, and apparently we accidentally, there was an accident where we bombed their village or something like that, and I was supposed to go there and say I'm sorry, and while I'm doing that, the Syrian army surrounded me and was coming in with like hundreds, if not probably thousands of troops. And it was kind of like almost like an Alamo type of situation. It was really actually kind of cool. And as the enemy was like literally outside the compound, right, I got artillery support, like light artillery. So I put in, all right, I need you to, attack this spot. I want all guns on this spot, right at the entrance of the compound. So this was done at like, I don't know, with 16 minutes on the counter, right? When it started firing, it was at like 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm like, it was 15 minutes from the moment I ordered the attack to like 2 or 3 minutes. And obviously in a game like that, those troops can move, and which they did. So I was wondering, when you guys do artillery or air support in this game, how long does it take you guys for that support to come in?
Who did you have calling the artillery or air support in?
I had a HQ.
Okay. That's a little bit better. You really want your FAOs, or I guess I don't know if it's an FAO, but your forward observers are going to be the most efficient at calling in artillery. They'll call it in much more quickly than other units. Anybody with a radio can call artillery in, but you'll get much better results from a forward artillery observer or forward observer. Usually, when I have a forward observer who has line of sight on where I want them to shoot, they'll be firing for effect inside 4 minutes. Okay. If I order someone who's not as proficient as that, depending on the unit type, depending on the situation, depending on if they're like pinned or other things, I've seen it be anywhere between like 6 minutes and like 16. So it really depends. One of the other things you also want to make sure you do is I'm not sure if emergency or emergency intensity of the barrage speeds anything up, but what it will do is it's basically like, I'm being overrun, just start dropping as quick as you can, but that leads to really inaccurate artillery fire because you don't take the time to do like proper spotting. So it all kind of depends. Like when you're doing a regular strike, it's 4 minutes to fire for effect usually, but you might have a spotting round coming in, an individual round coming in at 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something like that until you found the range and you can fire for effect. I think that part gets cut out when you do an emergency strike, but again, they're way less accurate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, explain why my rounds were going on the other side of the map when I told it to go, in the center. It was going all the way like a mile or two out.
Yeah, I mean, if you did emergency, you basically told them just start shooting as soon as you can, and that results in, not properly sighting in the strike. But I mean, it's also, to an extent, that's realistic. You're not just going to get on the phone and start dropping artillery inside of a minute or even 2 minutes in real life in most circumstances, unless you've already got the area gridded out so they know exactly where to shoot. And in your situation, it probably wasn't, because you were going to another village, so you probably didn't have every single spot on the map already zeroed in.
Yeah, I mean, it's those are only two things that there was one thing that I found that I thought was really actually kind of cool about this game. I didn't know about this until now, and it kind of eluded me. Where this same scenario where it's kind of like Alamo in the desert. I had a couple of guys inside a vehicle, and it was a Humvee with a 50 cal on top, and units were coming in, and I was going through like the options that this unit had, and on the bottom it said acquire and a green icon. I'm like, I don't remember seeing that before. So I clicked on it, and it said like take 5.56 rounds, 700 of it. I'm like, wait, what is this doing? So I click on it, and it added 750 rounds to the unit that was in there, and I said, oh shit! This entire time I could actually my units were running low on ammo. I could actually had them go to the vehicle and pull ammo out of it, which I thought was actually a really cool feature. I just wish I knew about it earlier.
Yeah, I've not known. I mean, that's neat. I haven't noticed that before. Usually my battles are over before my troops are too low on ammo for it to matter, minus my artillery, which I always expend.
Have you been playing any combat mission?
I have,
Mr. Furniture Man?
Yeah, Mr. Furniture Man. I've been playing a little bit of Shock Force 2. I've been playing the German campaign. I don't know why. I find that particularly interesting. It's part of the NATO DLC pack. But I've also been playing a couple other games. I just last night started to try and play Diplomacy 4, which is a little confusing to me. It's like a political simulation, basically, that lets you run a country. But it essentially just feels like it's a bunch of sliders and spreadsheets.
Wait, are you talking about Diplomacy 4 or are you talking about Democracy 4?
Oh, Democracy. Sorry. Democracy 4.
I was also just playing that.
So yeah, but I played a little bit of Democracy 3 years ago. I didn't realize it came out 7 years ago. But yeah, Democracy 4 is about to enter. I think it's just going into early access, right? Like it's not a full-blown launch yet.
That's right.
But it's coming out on tomorrow, October 6th. We're recording this on the 5th. So you guys will be listening to this after it's already out. And I'm a little bit overwhelmed. Like there's so much information when you first take over a country to try and figure out like what the hell you should do is a little bit challenging. Like they've got some nice indicators to like very clearly demonstrate what policies or what things are driving either increasing or decreasing of things like crime or GDP or the competitiveness of like your economy or CO2 emissions or those kind of things. So they've got very clear indicators on like what is driving that. But there's like 60 different icons, maybe more, that just pop up on your screen when you first start the game. And then you have to pick your you got to figure out like what the hell am I supposed to do with all this information? So it's a little bit of a overload in terms of information. Also, it feels like it's just a little bit too sandboxy for my taste. Like you go into the US and you're not playing as the Republicans, you're not playing as the Democrats, you're just like literally gives you the most absurd party names you can pick. Like it's like the National Unity Party or like the Party for Future Change but none of these parties mean anything. It's just flavor text. It's not like you build your own candidate, your own party essentially by the policies you pick, which is kind of cool. But I think it would also be a little bit more interesting if you already had like a base of support that you had to build your policies around rather than just being able to build from the ground up to say, like, I'm going to start this game and I'm going to be super capitalist and free market everything, and then like figure out which groups I should pander to, as opposed to just like, well, apparently you just won a political election, but now you have like 10% support at the start because you haven't actually done anything and have no policies. Like, that just felt a little bit weird.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. Yeah, it would be interesting. It doesn't even seem like that difficult for them to just tweak the starting balance, or even could you even make it like where if you're playing as, let's say, the Republicans, you have a specific base that you need to satisfy. It would force you to, it would force you to pick different policies, play a different way. That would actually add to the replayability, I feel. Whereas the sandbox, in theory, is supposed to be an experiment with any other style, but
there's probably one right way, right? Like, there's fundamentally one way to min-max it. It feels like a min-maxer's dream, by the way. Like,
it is. I love this game, and I was actually about to tell you that the first few times I played this game, I suffered from the same thing, where it's like it's a little bit of information overload, but then once you played it like once or twice, you realize you can just pick any category, just dig in on any category. You're just trying to make improvement. Like, I always, because I love money. I always work on fixing first crime, but second economy, and I always raise taxes. And these games are always, I don't know why this happens. No game seems to have properly modeled, or maybe we all don't have a proper understanding of the real world economy. But basically, every one of these games is like, you're a purely socialist country, you win. I don't know if that's accurate. Maybe everyone thinks that is, and maybe that's the way it is. But
so I'm kind of curious because I get overwhelmed, like you guys were saying, with this game. So since you said that, you're good with this game, I wonder how many hours did you have to put in before you kind of like grasped it, and you got to actually enjoy it? Because it is very overwhelming when you start this up.
I think that if you just go through the game for a couple of turns, you understand it. It's mainly how you have to train yourself how to process the information correctly, because as Matt mentioned, you rest your cursor over one bubble, and any bubble which impacts it will start pointing to it with different arrows. Red if it impacts it negatively, green if it's positive. And if there's 60 buttons, you have 60 different lines. It's just complete information overload. Your brain cannot dissect which arrow is coming from which button. But then you can actually click on them individually. You can see what the weighting factor is for each one. You can see each one individually. Like if you click on crime, you can see, okay, here's the things which affect it positively, like community policing, stuff like this. Here's the ones that affect it negatively, like alcohol or something. And then you can click on alcohol and you can see what are the factors that affect that. And
the interesting thing is, depending on the policy, certain things you want red, right? Like usually green, good, red, bad in these kind of games in your head. But like when you look at like alcohol abuse as an issue that you have to solve, you want that to be red because you want like the progress on that to be red, because that means alcohol abuse declines in frequency. At least that's the way I'm reading it.
I don't know the game over now, but that's probably true. So, John, I don't know, to answer your question, I think it's more about the GUI, just understand the GUI. I think somebody could probably have a reasonable idea of how to play in less time than some of the war games we play. Probably an hour.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure if you dug in and you focused on it in an hour and a half, I think you'd probably figure it out. I think part of the problem for me is I have a little bit of ADD, so it's just like if I'm going in there, it's like I don't even know where to start, and I just get overwhelmed, and it's a little bit like, all right, do I want to dig in on this and figure out what I should be doing? Or because again, there's no real direction. It's just kind of like choose your own adventure, build your own country. And there's small things that also irritate me, like the defense budget isn't even close to true, and the annual budget deficit isn't even close to true, but the total debt is, which is weird. So like things like that, where it's like the debt is real, but your budget deficit is nowhere near. Like, wow, I can balance the budget as the United States pretty quick. No, that's not possible. Yeah, exactly. But from a gameplay perspective, like, okay.
That's what I always do too. I balance the budget, and then I have like a positive budget even, and then I'm paying for, I cut taxes. It's just insane. Like I said, normally the way to win these games though is just to go fully socialist. So
well, certainly the way to win the popular support, which like to some extent I think it makes sense that people want things. But yeah, you piss off the capitalists who do that. So there's a balance to it.
The capitalists happy. You can just invest in just you're increasing So if you build the economy, you increase GDP, capitalists are happy, and then you just tax. So eventually you can roll back the taxes that you had a little bit because you already built up your economy. It's a little bit more self-sustaining. I don't know. Anyways, but the fun of the game, though, I think is just in experimenting at the very beginning. So my advice for anybody who wants to play Democracy 3, Democracy 4, it's the same thing. It's just pick one thing. If you're overwhelmed, just pick like crime and just work on fixing crime.
Don't hover over GDP. It will just everything feeds into GDP. It's just like, oh, okay.
Don't think about fixing GDP first, because that is pretty much everything. Although you probably could. You just go to new policies and then just implement new policies instead of trying to figure out what everything is impacting on the main screen. Another thing.
I just found it funny because I was looking at like payroll tax, and like if I was looking at it, I was just like, so it feels like I can, with very little political capital, because like the way you change policies is by using political capital, and it's like income tax is really expensive to increase. Like people do not want you to do that, which okay, that feels right. But then I go into the payroll tax and I try and increase it, and it's like, oh, cheap. No one really cares that much about payroll tax. Like it's fine, and I'm just like, that does not seem even remotely accurate with how people feel about that in the real world. So I think I just see a little bit like, I agree, it's a great sandbox. It's it looks like something that I would enjoy, sort of trying to just sort of solve the riddle, solve the equation of the right way to get these things moving in the right direction. But I also think that it takes a little bit of away from it when you're not anchored to certain positions, and you can build essentially utopia with there's no baggage. There's nothing you're tied to. There's no policies you're held to. There's no constituency that you are beholden to. And so I think that takes a little bit of away from what I would hope when you're trying to say, like, this is a game about, running a modern democracy. And it's kind of like, well, no, it's really not. If I don't have any parties that I'm beholden to, and I don't have any, fixed ideological points that I have to fit, it's just a theoretical simulator of like sliders around modern issues, but it's not really a game about running a democracy.
That's a great game. Actually, one
is there is there any game that is out there that's like that? Like I can actually like run the country, do an economy, all that good stuff.
Oh, that's exactly what I was about to. Thank you for the segue, John. I was just about to say this. I was going to say this because it's actually a game I'm playing right now. This is the game that more than maybe almost any other game I come back to over time. It's called Supreme Ruler. And you take on... the GUI is horrible. The game is extremely complicated. It takes a lot to learn. It's not up there. It's not necessarily like a war in the Pacific, but it's a pretty hard game to learn. But your main thing is to control all of the economy, but it's still a war game. So it's a geopolitical simulator, an economic or national economic simulator on top of a wargaming engine. So it's pretty much everything. It's an amazing game.
Yes.
Research too. You have to research all the different... Like, I love it because whenever people are talking about like, oh, this F-22 was a good one, we should have kept that, or, we shouldn't have gone to the F-35, you actually get the option to research either of those, or maybe if you want, you can go with both and you can buy as many as you want, and you have the whole option to like choose which research projects to fund, which ones not to fund. It's really cool. And that's just a really small part. Really small part of the game.
I'm really curious. So if you want to go the exact opposite direction, I have not played this, but I have looked at it. But a game that might be worth looking into, Jean, is called The Political Process, which is a game that's currently in early access. It has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam with 768 reviews, 96% positive. I think it's a very small studio. It's only $14, but basically you create a politician. You create like your own politician, and you play as like a Republican or a Democrat in the American political system. You create like the name, your age, your appearance. It says like calculate your political ideology by selecting over 40 policy positions, each representing a different aspect of your social and fiscal ideology. Play as any kind of politician you can imagine. Create a backstory. Is your character a young progressive looking to improve to the world one government policy at a time, a stubborn old libertarian? But basically, like you can run for 9 different political positions. You can be like a mayor of a city, You can have like a state position, national levels, U.S. House of Representatives, Senate, presidency. So you basically create like your own politician and try to build your own legacy or influence policy based off of your own agenda, presumably to like build your career. I've seen some people posting about it, but it's like you're trying to create your own politician, and I'm assuming the end goal, it's not like, I think it's a little bit more open world than just like your end goal is to be president, but like presumably your goal is to build your politician into a success and then, progress up through different ranks politically or get reelected or other things like that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's nice that it has that progression system, because a lot of people really enjoy a game where you can start off as mayor and then slowly build enough popularity. And also, of course, you have to build up campaign financing. You have to get enough people on board to slowly move up the political ranks. Yeah, it's very cool. I really like the idea. I've always wanted to play this, but I've never invested the time to learn it or, even get the game. But one day.
It looks like a game that's basically a bunch of like bar graphs and pie charts and like statistics. Like it's not like,
oh, this is a dream.
It's not like a super like high fidelity game, but it reminds me of like the order or out of the park baseball of like political games. Is kind of what it feels like, because out of the park baseball has a similar thing where like you can start off as like a manager of like a minor league club and you can like try and work your career up. But you can also start like at the top if you want, which I think most people do. But like out of the park baseball, in theory, you are a general manager of a team or a manager of a team, and you kind of build your career. Although that, again, most people just pick a team and in the major league level and play that way. But that you have those options, and it's like super statistical, like an Excel spreadsheet type.
There's an option here I see on one of those bar graph things that you were talking about. It has jobs, right? It has school board member, city council member, right? But on the top thing after jobs, it says protege. So can you explain what that is? Is it like if I fail as as a mayor or whatever, can I take a role as my protege and keep going?
I have no idea. Ooh, there's a dictator mode. I've never played the game. I'm just looking through like the features. It says in dictator mode, you can play as the president as long as you want without having to win re-election.
I like that.
You can be like the campaign committee chairperson of your party to like control the fate of your party. I'm not sure if there's like a legacy element where like you can play as like your next character. Maybe that's what protege is. Where like you could like when your character's done, you can play as the next person in like a dynasty, kind of like Crusader Kings style. I'm not sure. Maybe that's what it is.
I like this. I might actually pick this up. This looks really, really. It's much more or less overwhelming than the democracy that you were talking about.
No, I think it's actually more overwhelming.
Oh, I would guess it's more overwhelming. It's just very different. I think the information is probably presented initially in a more digestible way, but I think it's way more open world and way more complexity. I've heard it's very difficult.
I think democracy is the arcade version of this, actually. I know that sounds weird, but there's might be even more knobs to turn at first. Democracy, but you're in for the long haul, I think. Democracy is kind of like, it's almost like a roguelike. You just play through, you win your 4 years. If you want, you can keep playing. But I think the most fun, if you won after 4 years, unless you have the difficulty perfectly balanced, more than likely you'll probably already got the country back on it. And you're only going to...
So one other game that I was playing was, the game that just recently released, which is Crusader Kings. And so you guys have been mentioning you've been playing all these games. Have you been, hitting up Crusader Kings?
What's Crusader Kings?
It's by this small little studio. It's Paradox. If you guys...
Seriously? I'm just going to get like dead silence? No one's going to say anything to that?
I'm sorry, I'm looking this up on Steam.
Yes.
Crusader, how do you spell it?
Crusader Rings. I think it's a game about creating rings to rule them all.
Here it is. Oh, it's like Pogs from back in the day, except for it's rings.
Yes, I've been playing a lot of Crusader Kings. I think I'm like 56, 57 hours so far.
Are those real hours or those you going to sleep leaving the game on hours?
Those are real hours. I do not leave the game on when I leave. If I leave, the game's off. My Steam hour count is pretty damn accurate to what I actually do.
Yeah, not for me. Look, the thing is, once you have a family and you have kids interrupting you all the time, you constantly leave a game on, expecting you'll come back to it in 10 minutes, and like 4 hours later, it's still on, not moving.
Is that what happened with our World War One series?
Yeah, to end all wars. It was to end all series.
We got one episode in. But yeah, I've been playing a lot of CK3. What about you, John?
I have been playing it, but so there's a couple of things that I took away from the game when I first played it, right? The first thing was, the graphics, the map, everything was just jaw-dropping. I like how they have a clean UI, so, compared to their previous games, they slimmed down the UI, right? So you could see more of the map, more of the actual content you're working with, rather than having the UI take a good percentage of the screen that you're working on. I did like that. That was really cool. The graphics were, like I said, jaw-dropping. I really love those. I did notice one other thing that I have to give my hats off to Paradox, and I think this kind of goes back to what you were saying a couple episodes ago, reason why they have to go from Crusader Kings 2 to 3. Remember we had that discussion where I said just make DLCs, and you said no, they have to.
Wait, so you're saying they're not going to go to CK4?
No, they probably will, considering how amazing this one is, right? Hopefully, like 5 or 10 years down the road, give us a little time with this. But you remember how we were talking about Crusader Kings 2, and I said, just add DLCs, don't redo the game, and you were saying, no, they have to make a new engine, so it's much more fluid, so it works better. I could see exactly what you were talking about with this, because when I started this game up, right, and even if I was running around the map, zooming in, zooming out, this game didn't drop below like 50 frames per second, right? And I have a mid-range graphics card, so compared to Matt, right, like Matt was probably at like 120 frames per second, right? This game was probably like, like fluid, like like water for him, and so I was kind of like astounded by this new engine that they have, because this is the most fluid. This is the most graphically less. It's so graphically less demanding than any other game that they have out, including Imperator. Right? If I compare this to Imperator, this game is a lot more fluid in terms of the frame count, at least for me. So did you guys notice that? Matt, you with your 1080, you're probably like killing it, right?
Yes, I guess it runs well without me really thinking about it. I can't say I've like actually looked at my frame counts. I would hope that I wouldn't need anything close to a 1080 to get to to diminishing returns on a game like CK. Like, you're right, it looks gorgeous, but it's not like, let's be real, it's not exactly a graphically intensive game. It's a series of maps and some 3D characters. They look beautiful, but
I don't think people are benchmarking.
We're not talking about like an FPS. I don't think people aren't benchmarking CK results.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that the graphics are really good, and I was trying to focus on what were the differences between CK2 and CK3, and without like jumping back and forth between them, I just had this impression that everything is so much better organized. Like, people were talking about this before I started playing the game, so I already had this. It was something I was looking for. Like, I had heard that the GUI had been streamlined. I'm pretty sure you had told me that, Matt. But then when I was playing the game, I was like, "What? You know what? It's completely true." I didn't mind the old interface because we're the kind of people who are playing war games where you War in the Pacific type stuff, Advanced Tactics Gold, where you're diving into menu upon menu just to find the button that you need to click. We're okay with that because we're subjected to that on a daily basis. But this is extremely polished, and that might be I think it's one of the most noticeable things about the game to me is just how polished it feels. It really feels like a AAA grand strategy game.
When was the last time that Paradox released a game that people were this universally positive about and are like, this game was polished, it felt complete, it didn't feel like any major features were missing? Like, they released this game and it was in brilliant shape. I don't know if you guys remember when CK2 came out. When CK2 came out, like, I don't think, anyway, at least I remember trying to play as like non-Catholic or Eastern or Orthodox Christian countries. There were a lot of different like kingdom types that were locked when CK2 came out. Like, you could see they were there as if you could just go in and play them, but they weren't available to you at the time. Whereas like CK3, they've got very distinctive experiences if you're playing as the Vikings, versus if you're playing as Eastern Orthodox Christians, and to some extent, Muslim countries. I think they need to dig in a little more depth, and I'm sure they will on some of those different cultures via DLC. But like this game felt done. It felt polished. It felt done. It felt, to Jean's point, like it runs like butter. Like this is a very impressive job.
Now that said, what about the actual gameplay? Because I think we've talked a lot about how the game feels and how it looks. But what is your experiences with the gameplay? Like, is the gameplay loop to you very satisfying? Do you find it like more compelling than CK2?
Oh, vastly more than CK2. I think part of it's the UI enhancements. Like, I was never a big like min-maxer of like Paradox games back in the day. Like I didn't play Hearts of Iron 3 basically at all. I played it a little bit and it was just like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I didn't play, but I enjoyed Hearts of Iron 4, which I'm sure will make some people cringe. For similar reasons, I think, is what I like CK3. But I feel like CK3, unlike perhaps what some people felt like with Hearts of Iron 4, didn't lose the depth and complexity of the game. I feel like CK3, in addition to everything we've already talked about, it presents the same or similar levels of complexity in the game, but it just does it so much better and so much easier to grasp, like, what should I be doing? Like court management just seems much more straightforward, and that's maybe one of the menus that looks a little bit more similar to the old game. I think some areas of the game where they're trying to add some things like the hook system or the intrigue system, I think some of those areas I need to be compelled a little bit more on why I should be interacting with those. I'm not sure. I don't think the game is to the point where CK2 was, by the end. Certainly in terms of the level of depth and complexity to the game, but at this stage of release, I still think it's much better than a long period of CK2. But I do think that the game, there's things that get a little bit repetitive. Like it feels like all of the scandals you uncover are pretty much all like someone is having an affair with someone or someone had someone's kid. Like I'd like a little bit more variety there, and I'd like a little bit more like occasionally events pop up that someone's plotting against me, but I'm not sure I really get a good sense of like, okay, so someone in my court's plotting against someone else. Do I really care, or do I only care because you're giving me some penalties with relationships if I don't do anything? Like I think they could really dive into the intrigue mechanic and make it feel a little bit more alive than it does right now. But on the whole, I think the dynasty building aspects of the game are really well done. Maybe it's a little too easy to make people disinherited and just like kick them out of the line of succession if you're the head of your dynasty. But overall, I think it's really well done.
I wanted to ask you guys because I maybe you guys can better illuminate this. I learned this in history, but it was a while ago, so my memory is getting worse as I get older. What is the relationship between vassals and my character? Because like there was one instance, right, where my uncle and I think my cousin rebelled against me, so I sent my army. I smacked them around the map a couple of times. And I think I threw them in jail. But then
you didn't eat them. You
can eat them. Are you serious?
If you have a taste for human flesh, you can.
Oh shit! I didn't know that. That's actually pretty cool. Is that, are you just pulling my leg, or is that actually a real thing?
No, it's a real thing.
Oh shit!
There's even an achievement where you can eat your the head of your church. There was like an IGN article about someone like eating the Pope.
Oh my god!
Anyway, to answer your question, John, it's kind of like the United States. You are the president, but the states might rise up. You might have a civil war. Vassals can choose to try to go to war against you and try to like separate themselves that way.
But so the one problem that I had is like, so my uncle after the war, right? Obviously he lost. I clicked on the province where he came from. It had him running the province, but it had like bars in front of him. So I'm assuming he's in jail, right? So I was like, well, I need to swap him out. I'm not going to have him run this because, he's a traitor. So I switched it to another character that had really good stats. Maybe I didn't look at it completely. I don't know. I was rushing maybe. I clicked on a good character, and all of a sudden, I don't know if it was immediately, but I don't have that province anymore. Apparently now it belongs to the King of England. And I was just standing there, and I was like, wait, how the heck did I lose this province here? So yeah, go ahead.
What you need to look at when you're talking about your vassals is, so if someone is already a vassal of you, then they are loyal to you. They are required to basically serve you. They are a junior, they're a senator. They're a I think a better description is, think of them like a governor or a mayor of a town, and they have their own private army. This territory is theirs by right. It is their land, not yours. But they have an agreement to be subservient to you. They are your vassal. They are, your protectorate. So you will protect them from outside threats, and in exchange, they will give you a certain percent of income and a certain percent of their soldiers to serve in your armies. But if you do things that piss them off, they can try and rebel against you if they don't want to be your vassal anymore. If you give territory to another person who might be in your court, but they may not actually be your vassal. They may be someone else may be their liege. And so if you give territory to someone whose liege is not you, then that territory no longer is part of your kingdom. Their loyalty is not to you. Their loyalty is to this other liege. And so, it'd basically be like giving a mayor in Canada authority over a city in Minnesota. And that mayor in Canada, his loyalty is to the Canadian government, not to you. And so that territory goes with him. So I mean, lands, and the best way to think about this is, lands that are in your dominion or anyone's dominion are their personal property. It is their territory. The people are loyal to them directly. And what you are essentially someone, if you're above them, you essentially are protecting them from outside threats. But you are also, obliged to protect them, and in exchange, they give you a certain amount of money and a certain amount of troops. And that can be changed through different vassal taxes or different levels of crown authority, where you can increase or decrease the amount of tax that you apply to them, the amount of soldiers that you apply to them. But as you exert your authority as king or as a ruler, as your crown authority goes up, naturally that reduces the amount of independence that the vassals have. And they may rebel for that reason as well. Like if they see you taking more of their money, more of their soldiers, if they see your authority growing more and more, that limits their own authority. It's a states' rights situation, if you will. And so they may rebel against you because they don't like the degree to which you're interfering in what they view as their personal affairs. Whereas your dominion territories are areas that you don't have a vassal, you personally own. So, like, when you first start, you're going to have, if you just start as a count, for example, you'll have typically like one county that is directly yours, and that land is your territory personally. And, you may have a liege that you are obliged to serve and to send your soldiers to their armies. But, that's the dominion piece. The dominion piece is land that you personally own. That is your territory, not one of your vassals.
So, is there a possibility that as king or whatever, as my dominion, can I absorb those vassals? I was trying to figure that out.
To a point, if you directly take over territory, then you have a limit on how much territory you can directly control. The thing you need to remember about the Middle Ages is that, the King of France did not personally. I think what you're looking at this in sort of a modern lens. You're looking at this as of like the age of imperialism, where France was France and everybody in France owed allegiance to France. And in the Middle Ages, it's much more of a personal loyalty. And so, the joke about the Holy Roman Empire being neither holy nor Roman nor an empire was because there was no real central authority. All these dukes, all these counts, they had loyalty to certain lieges, but the king himself was elected by all these lieges. The emperor himself was elected by them. Like literally, they elected him amongst them their own. They could choose to elect someone else. So their authority is very limited, and so these different groups within the Holy Roman Empire exercised an unusually large degree of autonomy compared to places that nationalized more quickly, like France or Spain or England.
So in this game,
but essentially, it's just a bunch of tribes, a bunch of fiefdoms, a bunch of dukes, all vying for their own personal power. And in certain circumstances, they will agree to give some of that up for protection from outside threats. but it's not the king. It's not the Kingdom of France yet, really. At this point, it's well, it is, but it's not in the way we're thinking. It's not a modern nation state.
So as like, let's say I control a piece of France, like let's say, I don't know, Cherbourg, right? I can go to war, even though I'm part of France, I can go to war with, I don't know, Khan, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, depending on, again, that to some extent that depends on the king's authority. If the king of France has a high level of crown authority, then he may be able to do things like prohibit you from going to war with his own vassals. It all depends on how much authority the king has, or your liege has. It's really about the relationship between. The game is fundamentally a game about expanding your family and your dynasty and your power, and managing your relationships with others. And it's put in the backdrop of the Middle Ages, where that was more important than anything, because again, the counts, the dukes, the kings, it's essentially a group of elites that are all coming together and agreeing to share power in different ways, and they get different benefits out of it. But a lot of it depends on what your contract is with your particular liege or your particular vassals, and that determines how much authority or autonomy you have. It's much more like the actual history is way more complex than the game even lays out. Like, this is sort of a cookie cutter, like one size fits all. Like all vassals sort of have the same dynamic in the game with their lieges, in a way that like it treats the game. I think one of the problems is the game treats the Byzantines as if it's like a feudal state, which Byzantium was not. Like the Byzantine Empire was very much its own thing, and I'm sure we'll get a DLC pack that sort of delves into the internal politics of Byzantium a little bit more. But the game doesn't do a great job of modeling that, because it sort of treats Byzantium almost like it's a Western European feudal state. And it kind of does that for a lot of, just broadly speaking, a lot of the different countries or kingdoms in the game. So that's one of the areas that I think would be a little bit weak, Tortuga, to answer your earlier question, that I think they need to build out more.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. Like, so I was curious about the general impression you guys have about the game. I'm still playing some multiplayer with people, so that's where I've gotten a multiplayer experience now. I played a couple single player games. I feel like I have enough information to have made at least a nice initial impression of the game. But like John, I don't know how much you enjoyed it. It sounded like you really enjoyed the graphics. How much are you enjoying the game?
So I do like the whole story. Like, so for example, I got really attached to my character. In my playthrough, like I was the King of England, but I think the Vikings came over and kicked my ass. So my dad died. I took over the role of, I guess, one of the sons. And then one of my brothers was a vassal to the new king that my father died, that replaced him. And I really liked the dynamics of that. So that was actually really cool. I liked that. And I forgot, because like you were saying, Matt, I played a lot of Vicky, Hearts of Iron, so I'm not like down to how, I guess, the medieval ages kind of ran. So I do like that dynamic. I just gotta get used to it, I guess. That's one thing that kind of be like, well, my brother runs a part of England, so I'm running a part of France, so my family is a part of two countries. And so I guess it's very different than the other Paradox games, because you're in a kind of different state. Like your family could be a part of multiple nations, and I don't know. I was kind of like hoping, I didn't get to this point, but I was kind of hoping my brother would work with me, that I would, as a vassal of France, right? I guess I report to the king, right? Like you were saying, Matt, and he's a vassal to that crazy ass king that killed my father. That we could work together to get France to declare war on England, and he would rise up against the English king. Would something like that work? Would I be able to push something like that?
I'm not sure about that exact example, but you can definitely like build relationships across different groups, and then you could launch like a liberty war to try and break free from your liege or whatnot, and you could bring other subjects of that liege into the war with you, so that you're all sort of fighting. You could scheme against the person who killed your father. Maybe you would establish a murder plot and get a bunch of different characters involved in the murder plot. against the individual if they like you, don't like this person. Like there's a lot you can do in the game. Some of the more deep, 4D level chess type moves are not exactly very well laid out in terms of like what you should be doing. I think the game does a very good job of presenting something that is easy to jump into and start fiddling with the mechanics. But in terms of like really diving into like how is intrigue going to help you, or what should you be doing, or some of that stuff is a little bit play your own adventure or choose your own adventure. I think the best way to describe this game, you're kind of talking about how it's different than other Paradox games. EU is an empire game. It's about painting the map your color. It's a game about expanding a nation state and building an empire. Hearts of Iron is obviously about World War II. CK is very much its own thing. CK is about building a dynasty. Don't think of it as in just territory. It's about your family. It's about spreading your family's influence throughout all of Europe. And to some extent, that's a piece of like building your own empire, but it's not this imperialistic, I'm going to take over all of France. It's, I want to maybe become the king of France. I want people to be, my subjects, but it's also about like building your family's reputation. This game, EU is as I said, it's an empire builder. CK is a grand strategy role-playing game. That's the best way to describe it. You are playing the role of the head of your family. And you're telling a story.
You'll notice that you instead of having like a technology tree or something like that, although there is that's actually based on your culture, and then you have like another kind of RPG tech tree, which is your dynasty. So it's your family. And Jean, I want to say that the way you experience this game, if you have a little bit, I'm this way. CK is actually my least favorite of all the Paradox titles. It's my least favorite of their main series because I'm a paint map winner. I like to paint the map and win. This game is not about winning, it's about the story. And that's really entertaining. And actually, this is actually to CK3's credit, it's the least favorite of my series. Like, I don't gel with this. I like to win. I like to increase my territory gradually and become bigger and bigger and more powerful and all that. That's how I like win, right? CK3 is not really about that, and yet I still enjoy the game. So it's quite a big nod to Paradox that they've gotten somebody who doesn't really even like that gameplay loop to be interested in playing it.
And it's very specifically built to push back against that too, right? Like the succession laws, the way the game handles when you die and your child takes over. If you have multiple children, for 95% of the countries or kingdoms in the beginning of the game, good luck. Your kingdom is going to be divvied up evenly amongst all of your children or all of your male children.
That's right. Yeah, I was about to say that too. Basically, this game actually has built-in ways to undermine the map painting, and I would say that that's only not true, or at least it's a little bit less true if you play the 1300 start. But if you're like me and in Hearts of Iron, you'll only ever play the earliest start. I only ever play 1936. I don't even touch the 1949 or 1941, 1939. So the same thing with CK3. I see the earliest start, and like for some reason, that's the only one I want to play. Oh yeah, if that's the case, you'll be stuck in the feudal succession laws, and you're constantly going to be. You have to actually figure out a way to go from being a county holder to being a duchy. And then once you have a duchy, once you establish that, you can pass on an entire duchy to your kid. And then once you have a duchy, your next goal is to get to kingdom. And you have to use the different map modes to figure out what territory you need to capture in order to get to a kingdom. And once you have like half of the territory for the kingdom, you can declare yourself the de jure owner of that, and then you'll pass on the entire kingdom. Now, when that happens, if you have like two duchies and you haven't quite got to kingdom, probably one of the two duchies will go to like your other son, and you'll only play as the first son, and the empire splits. So you kind of have to make these big land grabs to get bigger. But the game, I don't think it kind of pushes back against that. It doesn't want you to form like the EU in like the year 1000, because the game is kind of about being divided. It's about feudal kingdoms, which are small.
Is it possible I can rise up all the way to the King of France? Is that a possibility?
Oh, it's definitely possible. I think where Tortuga was coming at is more of just there are mechanics that are designed to prevent you from having like total control of everything, right? Like it's not about giving you personal dominion over all these different territories. If I take the kingdom of Georgia in the Caucasus, I'll pass that kingdom title down. But if I'm a king and I could have multiple titles, right? I could be the king of Georgia, the duke of Georgia, and also the duke of Azerbaijan. And when I die, my eldest son might get the duchy of Georgia and the kingdom of Georgia as his crown, but he won't be the duke of Azerbaijan. That'll go to my other son. The flip side of that is if I haven't formed the kingdom yet, and I have like 3 duchies, those might be broken up amongst 3 different children, and all of a sudden, what was building toward a nice little kingdom just got fractured because. Frankly, that's also kind of how the succession laws worked in a lot of these places at this time. I do feel like it takes a little bit too long to get to primogeniture, which is essentially the trait that allows you to pick one ruler to inherit all of your titles. I haven't seen it in my game that I've been playing for it's like 1100, and I still don't have it. And I think by 1100, I could be wrong. I don't know the history very well. But I think by that time period, most cultures had already sort of adopted that hereditary passing down of titles by picking a primary heir. I could be wrong. I also haven't really played as the Byzantines yet, so I'm curious how they handle that, because the Byzantine Empire obviously doesn't fracture. So certain cultures may have certain rules that give them some exemptions there.
We're actually playing we're in a multiplayer game as the Byzantines. I'm with Wolfpack and Finnish. It's been a lot of fun. I don't know if there's anything different about it. I think that you hit it on the head. It'll probably be DLC upcoming because it just feels like the same thing. It's just a really strong empire, but it's still an empire. So it blobs too much. Like there are definitely areas where they need to optimize. Like the Byzantine Empire in my game and in every game I've seen, like always blobs like crazy because the 867 start date is a period in history when Byzantium was very strong. But it doesn't feel like there's enough breaks on it. I think I've seen one war, that independence war, that kind of fractured the internal politics, and they still have like 12,000 soldiers, which is just an ungodly huge army in this period of time. So I feel like they definitely need to dig in there a little bit more. But yeah, I think the one thing I would like to see a little bit more refinement around is the way that some of those titles end up getting passed on. Like, there's a stupid amount of border gore because, as we're talking about, like, all of your children, like, they get your titles. And so, like, that ends up with some really weird stuff. Like, Sweden in my game has big territories in Spain and North Africa. Scotland had part of Russia. Like, just really weird, like, borders that don't make a lot of sense. I think it might not be a bad idea if, like, people who are actually in line to inherit parts of the kingdom maybe should stay within a certain geographic range of that kingdom's primary title, with maybe like 5% of the children may be able to travel or something, right? But like they need to do something to tie the territory down a little bit more toward like what seems realistic. Because while for every kingdom that was like the Habsburgs that had chunks of Spain and the Netherlands and Italy and just all over the place, nobody else did that. That was like the Habsburgs and the Habsburgs alone. There is kind of mechanic that pushes back against that because if you're a different religious type, or is there also a difference? I think also in culture type.
Yeah, there are different culture types.
The place you're ruling, your county is more likely to rise up in rebellion against you. But I haven't found the rebellions like that difficult.
No, the only time I've ever had rebellions pose a real threat is when vassals have risen up. But like peasant rebellions are never a threat.
Yeah, so they might need to strengthen that so that people can win back, like local people can win back control. Although maybe that just wasn't very common back in the feudal times.
Maybe not. I'm not sure. I mean, that might be true, but maybe I don't know. I think a geographic element would be smart. Like, yeah, France and England might have some interaction between the royal families there, but the British aren't going to send one of their prized sons of their king to To marry someone in the Byzantine court or to marry.
Yeah, I mean, it's about your daughters being married off to, like, you just kind of scroll on who's the most powerful ally, and you just send them off halfway across the world because that's the most powerful ally. I've seen it too. It's in every game I've played. It's the same thing. You do have, like, Sweden everywhere, and I've seen literally Sweden in North Africa, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And the Byzantines down in, like, the very, very southern edge of the map in, like, middle sub-Saharan Africa, which also doesn't make sense to me. And it's just these, I don't know how it happens. I think it's like these little marriages that end up with rule going over to the other, somehow being absorbed into somebody who's part of the Byzantine Empire.
Yeah, I'm not saying there shouldn't be any ability for it, but I do think if they could cut down, at least on the AI's frequency of doing it. If a player wants to do it, that's one thing, but it just is a little bit like, but these, in my view, these are minor quibbles. These are things that, like, I feel like they need to optimize the game, and lo and behold, the game just came out, so I'm sure there's going to be a ton of optimizing of the game. They've already released one really big patch. So I imagine these things will get ironed out, but just quibbles on, like, it's a little bit immersion breaking when you see Spain, with territories in like sub-Saharan Africa or something.
So do you like the game overall, Matt?
I love it. I think it is the most fun that I've had playing a Paradox game since Victoria.
I wanted to ask you, since you guys have literally like dozens and dozens of hours, right? What was the most, I would say, unusual or funny experience that you had in a game? Like something that was just you didn't expect and was out of the woodwork.
Oh gosh. Oh man. So I was playing a previous multiplayer game with Finnish Jaeger and Wolfpack 345, and the Wolf was playing as, I forget what, but he just had this character that it's like the character from hell. His wife cheated on him and then tried to kill him with his son. He got every like disease imaginable. It's pretty funny. The game actually recognizes when your character is really bad, and it'll say, "This is you, comma, unfortunately." It's pretty funny. So he had this just horrible character that was hit by everything, and then wars were declared against him, and we ended the game almost immediately after that because we were all losing. It was pretty difficult to start off as like the tribes just east of East Francia or Francia. Yeah, it's a difficult area, so we all died, but playing it was a lot of fun. So basically, losing is fun. It's like anytime you get to these RPG or story built or choose your own adventure type games, losing really, or fun. You're having fun when you're losing. It's true. It's a lot of fun to lose in this game.
It's also like it's not the end of the world because of the way that kingdoms break up so frequently, and dynasties can fall because of these crazy succession laws. Like, sure, you might lose your duchy, but as long as you still have one county left, you're still in the game. When you lose your last county, then you lose. The game's over. But as long as you have one county still in your name, as long as you're still a count, there's always that chance that next person in your dynasty can work their way back up and build something mighty and awesome. And so even when you're losing, you're not really losing. Like that's the piece of it. It's not like one of those games when everything snowballs against you and you have no chance, unless maybe you're bordering like Byzantium. But other than that, like I think that's one of the truly unique things about this game is that, again, losing is fun. You don't just lose it all outright.
Yeah, and to harp on this point just a little bit more, even if you are next to Byzantium and they take you over, more than likely you can end up just becoming a vassal of theirs, and then you can work from inside the empire to grow your dynasty. So
yeah. I think in terms of the weirdest thing that I've seen happen to me, so I would say there's two things. The first one was my son was absolutely, I was a very successful king. I was a man in an iron mask because I had been maimed, and I was out for a hunt because you can do things like hunts to gain prestige and other things like that. And I was out for a hunt, and apparently my son was with me along with a much larger group of people. And I come upon my son. Someone is dead at his feet. He has a sword that is bloody in his hands. And he basically was like, "It wasn't me." And I'm just like, it gives me a couple of options. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do with my son? Like, am I going to just cover it up and agree to let him go on his way? Because he is my heir. Am I going to arrest him and throw him in jail? And I'm thinking, I've got 2 sons. I'm a little bit old. I'm probably going to be dying soon. I've built a pretty nice duchy here, but I don't want to lose it all because of the way these succession laws work. And my son is really just a piece of crap. He is. I'm going to get that, like, unfortunately, this is you type blip if he takes over. And the third option is, don't worry, I'll tell them the boar killed him. It's unfortunate that it killed you too. And then I killed my son.
Oh, shit.
And so I got rid of my crappy son in favor of a much better son. And no one caught me.
Pardon me, my liege, but these appear to be not boar wounds, but a sword wounds.
Yeah, right. I think the excuse he said was like, it wasn't me, the boar got him. And then the bottom quote was like, it's unfortunate it got you too. But yeah. And so, by the way, when you do things like this, these are secrets that are out there about you that other people can uncover, and then they can blackmail you to, like, get you to lower your levy tax on them, or, give them gold or other things like that. And it can cause, or if they become public, then it can cause people to really hate you or rise up in rebellion against you. I had a son who turned out to be a bastard. My wife slept with someone else, and they found out that he was a bastard, and all of my vassals hated him because he was now the leader of the kingdom, but everyone was like, you're not the rightful liege. But anyway, so that first one was one of my favorites. The other one was I think it might have been the same king. I was sick, and so I hired a physician, and the best physician, the most learned physician, was apparently an alternative medicine doctor. And I got an event that popped up that basically was like, you're better, but you found out she fed you humans. You found out she fed you human meat. And what's worse is that you liked it. And so then you get this, like, taste for human flesh trait. So then, it turns out that my character is a little bit nuts. And when there's a stress mechanic in the game where, like, as you do certain things, you gain stress, which is supposed to simulate, like, the stress of running your kingdom and being, like, a ruler and things like that. But, like, if your stress goes too high, you can have major health penalties, right? Like, think about all the presidents and how you see, like, what they look like when they go into office and when they come out of office. And, the stress of the job literally kills you. But similar in your case, like, the stress can kill you. It can reduce your fertility. It can actually cause major health problems. But apparently my individual who now had a taste for human flesh, it relieved his stress to execute people, but then also eat people. So then I was like, anytime the stress level got too high, it was like I had a group of people that I just kept in prison all the time, just in case I was a little bit hungry.
Oh shit!
So I ate 3 or 4 people. Eventually, I stopped because it started giving me, like, at some point it was like, if you eat someone, you have a 20% chance of becoming sick. And I was like, well, I don't know if the stress relief is that important. I don't want to get sick. But yeah, he was the executing and cannibal stress relieving king. He was one of the best kings I've had in my game. No one, by the way, that's another secret that people could uncover in theory, and if they find out that I'm a cannibal, again, major problems with my vassals, but it worked out for me.
I gotta play this game. That sounds hilarious. Is this common for every playthrough where you get something unusual like that, or unique?
I mean, it happens a fair amount. I wouldn't say, like, he's the only cannibal I've had in, like, 300 years of gameplay. So I don't know that cannibals are super common, but I'm sure there's things you could do, hiring alternative physicians or other things like that would trigger the event. That's not an event I've seen happen a lot. I think I've seen 2 cannibals in my game so far.
Wow, that's awesome. I definitely gotta put a couple of more hours in this game. Did you guys, either of you, go to, like, the end event, like, finish the game completely to the last year?
No, not yet. I play a pretty slow pace. I play, like, ×3 speed, so it's not a very common. It's slow. Like, I've been playing for, like, 30 hours on this one game, and I think I'm, like, 300 years in.
Well, yeah, that sounds like something I definitely need to put more hours in. Do you guys have any other things to say about the game before we go on to see what's drinking what?
By the way, 1.5 million as of September 29th. Players had eaten 1.5 million prisoners. So like everybody who's playing CK3, there have been 1.5 million people. So those 3 or 4 victims of mine are just a statistic.
Oh man, I like that they included that.
Yeah, they had like 40 million kids have been born. They had all these other stats. A pope has been killed and eaten.
Hopefully, while you were eating, what were you drinking?
I'm just drinking some coffee at 12:30 at night.
What kind of like regular coffee, like Dunkin' Donuts coffee, or something nice?
I think it's Caribou Coffee, which is like a chain of like coffee shops.
Oh, okay.
But it's pretty
Local?
good. Just black, just like I'm not sure exactly. I don't remember the name on the bag. Like it's just like a classic roast, dark, no sweetener or anything.
Tortuga?
Liver, fava beans, a nice Chianti.
All right,
drinking
Clarice.
Chianti.
No. I'm actually out of my drink. I don't have any drink
Don't
left.
tell me it was Corona.
I need to go get a refiller.
Well, what were you drinking last time? Not Corona. You were drinking Miller, I think, champagne of beers.
Oh, the Miller High Life.
That was a while ago, but
It was.
Did you go through your stock of Miller High Life?
Oh, yeah.
hey, here's the deal. Our next episode, I will have some High Life if you have some High Life Tortuga.
Well, you'll have to remind me when the next episode will be. I need to make sure I stock up first.
I figure if I cause my liver punishment, it should be something good.
Yeah, Miller High Life. That fits the bill.
Champagne's good. What do you got against champagne? The champagne of bottled beer.
I prefer a nice single malt. I was going to say strategy, but single malt.
I don't think anybody's been drinking a single malt on this episode in like 20 episodes.
I was going to say that. I feel like, is this because of me? Have I ruined everything?
No, it's just got too expensive. I had this thing for like the first 15 episodes. It's like, I'll drink a scotch that's as old as the episode number. And now it's like, well, I'd be bankrupt. So can't do that anymore.
I wonder how much something like that would be, though. I know like a 25-year McLaren, right, when I was at the bar and I got that, was like, I was actually thinking about it a couple of days ago because I was like, when I went to the bar in Brooklyn, I wanted to know, I ordered a 16-year McLaren, I think. And I remember she charged me, I think, like $28 or something like that for that drink. And I was thinking, I was like, I wonder how much a 25-year McLaren is. I got that one time at a party where they gave everybody one free drink. And I was going to grab my wife's, she got a ticket too. And so I finished that 25-year McLaren, and I went to my wife and I said, "Can I get your ticket? I want to get another, another 25-year." And she was like, "I gave it to Nicole, whatever her friend was." And I went to Nicole and I was like, "Whoa, did you use the ticket already?" She was like, "Yeah, I got a Corona." I'm like, "A Corona?" She was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "You dropped that ticket on a Corona that you could have bought for $1 at the grocery store?" She's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Shit." So I was kind of pissed there.
In terms of how much would a 25-year-old scotch, it's going to depend on the brand. There's a huge discrepancy, but I think most 25s you're going to run probably upper 200s to 500 plus.
How much for a glass? Like if I go to the bar?
A glass, I don't know. I've never ordered a scotch like that by the glass. I think they did. There was like a 21-year flight at a whiskey bar I was at a couple of years ago now, that I think they had like 3 basically shots worth of 3 different whiskeys that I think was like $99, and they were all 21-year-old whiskeys.
Ooh. But only a shot glass.
Actually, no, I think there were 4. It was a flight of 4 different glass of scotches, but each one was only like a shot. So basically,
not much.
4 shots, 4 drinks, was about $99.
Yeah.
I did not get that, by the way, but just remember seeing it on the menu.
Yeah, I see that's the thing, like if you buy a bottle, right, you're going to go through that bottle quick because, it's you get that $200-$300 bottle and you start pouring. It's like, I'll do a little bit more. I'll do a little bit more. I'll do a little bit more. It's like buying ice cream for the house, right?
No, man, you got to savor it. You don't binge on stuff like that. Come on. If you're just going to binge, you get High Life. You live the Tortuga life over there.
Well,
hey, now you can sip on a High Life.
You can. I'm not sure anyone has ever enjoyed sipping. I'm just kidding. But anyway, so yeah, so that's you. Were you drinking anything tonight, Jean?
Nah,
we're all we're all striking out over here.
Nah, just black coffee. I just kind of doing black coffee lately.
Well, I know I've enjoyed talking a lot about Crusader Kings III, the newest game out by Paradox Development Studios and published by Paradox Interactive.
Yeah, big props to that team right there that developed that. One of the guys that I follow, which we also interviewed, Troy. I know he put a lot of work into that, so I got to give him props.
We interviewed Troy.
Well, Jean interviewed Troy. I wasn't able to make it. You weren't on the podcast yet, so it was just Jean. But yes, we did. He was on the podcast a while back. He definitely was involved in the game. I know. I'm really excited to see what happens with CK3. I think for them to be starting at this point, for them to be starting in such a good spot, like I can't wait to see what they do with it. Like I'm really excited to see what these DLCs look like, how they build the game out, like what they really drive down in, the ability to create. Like one of the things I hope they do, and this isn't necessarily DLC, this may just be patching, is I'd like to see more variety in some of the plots or some of the schemes or what's going on in terms of your internal politics. But like I just think I might be. I don't know if this is hyperbolic, but I feel a little bit like you, Jean. I've never seen a better Paradox game at release. This is the best Paradox game at release that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Definitely agree.
And knowing how they build their games out and craft them into something massively bigger and better than they usually come out as, like imagine where they could go with this.
Well, I'm kind of crossing my fingers for because there's been a lot of talk about Victoria 3 on the Paradox. Like they always reference. I'm not saying that they announced it, but the last couple of months I've been noticing there's a lot of Victoria 3 references. So as excited I am for Crusader Kings 3, I am on the edge of my seat for an announcement that will make me fall off my seat.
I think Victoria 3 is going to be a tricky one for them to manage because I have no doubt they will do it at some point. But I think there's just it's such a passionate fan base. Paradox was in a very different place when Victoria 1 and 2 came out. Like this was years ago. They were not the game studio they are today. Even CK2 was very different, I think, than what people are looking at from Victoria, and I think they had a really good natural progression for CK2 to CK3 that worked. But I think Victoria 3 that is going to be a very challenging game for them to get right because they are not, again, they don't make games the way they did back then. That's not a knock. They have a very different approach. They have a much bigger audience. They have a lot of different sort of priorities, I think, as a game company than they did then. And so I think that's going to be tricky because it's one of their smaller. They've always said it's one of their primary intellectual property games, like of their core stable of games. Victoria 3 is the smallest of their fan bases, but it's also incredibly passionate. And if they try and go mainstream with this, with Victoria 3, whenever they do it, like they've got to thread the needle very carefully to be successful there. So I don't obviously they're not rushing into it. They haven't rushed into it, but I don't know that it's coming in the next year or not. I think they're going to be very deliberate about how they approach that. I think another EU is more likely to come first.
I
could be wrong.
I feel like we're in a good place with I don't know. I want a new. I don't know. I played a lot of EU. I feel like it's still a good place. I really feel we need a new Vicky, definitely, or something new. Something new would be nice. Cold War kind of thing.
Imperator was new.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to push for a Vicky, I'm trying to Vicky or a Cold War kind of thing. This is something that I wanted from Paradox for, I don't know, since what? How old is Vicky? It's over a decade, right?
I think it's about a decade now. It might have been like 2011, okay. 2010. Came out before CK2.
Yeah, so I feel like they should go in like a circle. Like that definitely needs to, if it came out before CK2 and there's already a CK3, that definitely needs some love and attention.
Well, we'll see. Time will tell. But I think obviously CK3 is in a great place, and I'm excited to play it. I'm excited to see what they do with it, and whenever Victoria 3 comes, it'll come. But I think with that being said, that we probably tied a nice little bow on this episode, and we'll wish everybody well. Hope everybody's having a great beginning to your fall. It's this year has been
a wonderful 2020.
I mean, it's
just
nuts.
Been fantastic.
It's nuts that we're already in October. That's it. Just oh my goodness, what 2020 has been a
dumpster fire,
insane year from a lot of things. But there's also been a lot of good gaming that's come out, which thank God, with everything going on, that we've had some great games to be playing. And, get your lists ready, Sean, because we're going to have to start thinking what we're most excited about in 2021 in not too long. Until next time, guys, thanks again for tuning in for episode number 63 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. To both Jean and Eric, thank you very much for coming on, and it's been great to talk to you guys again. We've been doing a lot of developer interviews, but I like talking about games with you guys as well, so we need to kind of kick this into gear a little bit and get a couple more episodes out. But hope you guys all enjoyed, and until next time, we're out.
My name is Tortuga Power, how dare you? It was the first time I was like, wow, he called me Eric.